Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1272, October 31st, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy Halloween. Hopefully where you live you're able to go to some parties or go out and do some Halloween trick-or-treating, whatever you do out there. Hopefully you're able to do that. It just depends on what state you live in, I guess. You know, of course, pretty much around where I live, things have been going on pretty much as normal. You see people wearing masks and doing some social distancing, but for the most part, we're carrying on with our lives as normal. But of course, if you live in one of those places with a far left-wing governor who wants to punish you to try to hurt Trump, to be quite honest with you, and if you live in one of them places, then you're probably going to have a bummer of a Halloween, unless you want to go ahead and defy your governor or mayor's orders, and in which case you can go have a good time anyway. I'll leave that one up to you. I know what I would do. Now, let's go ahead and get to the news of the day. Just really one story. Of course, there is no Spygate stuff going on at all. There has not been for almost a month now. Hopefully, after the election, we'll get back to the Spygate story, which is really all I want to talk about. But now we're in an election cycle, a presidential election cycle, a month away, and so that's dominating everything. And of course, we have this issue with the Bidens and the Biden crime family being exposed here just before the election. And of course, the big piece of breaking news was about a week ago when Tony Bobulinski came out and gave the interview. Came out and did that little presser and then did the interview with Carlson. Now he's done a couple other interviews and made it clear as to what was actually going on there. And so that's pretty much going to cover the latest information on that. And then I'm going to get right into my 2020 election predictions. So, we learned about 2 days ago that James Rosen from Sinclair Broadcasting, James Sinclair and that organization was able to confirm that in late 2019, the FBI did open a criminal investigation into Hunter Biden and associates, and that investigation is focused on money laundering. And the investigation is currently open and active today. We also learned from that interview with James Rosen and Tony Bobulinski that Bobulinski did a 5-hour interview, and he was represented by counsel. This was on October the 23rd. And he is being described in this investigation, Bobulinski, as a material witness. Now, keep in mind, it was James Rosen who was spied on by the Obama administration when he worked for Fox News. But that's a whole other issue. Now, this raises a lot of very, very troubling questions. If there has been an investigation into Hunter Biden and associates since late 2019, then by now they certainly should have been able to figure out what the rest of us have been able to figure out in just a couple of weeks, just with a limited amount of information that we've been given. I think it's pretty obvious. And of course, remember how this all got started with this laptop. The guy who was doing the repair on the laptop was observing that they were doing impeachment hearings against Trump because he had asked the Ukrainian president to look into the corruption, particularly with the Bidens and Burisma and that type of thing. And so they open up an impeachment against Trump based on that. And here, this computer repair guy is sitting there with evidence proving that what Trump was alleging was absolutely true. And the FBI had this information in their possession at that time. So this was so troubling to the computer repair guy that he went to the FBI. When the FBI did nothing is when he went to Giuliani. So right there is the whole narrative. The FBI had this information and probably knew about it long before that, to be quite honest with you. I mean, we do have the CIA, we have all these various government agencies that are always looking into these sorts of things. They knew a lot about what was going on in Ukraine and all these other places. Very hard to believe that someone as high profile as the son of a senator and vice president, that his activities are not being noticed or recognized by people who would be paying attention to this. Of course, we know from the impeachment hearings themselves that there was several testimonies where people said, yeah, what we knew about what Hunter Biden was doing, and yes, it was troubling. So a lot of people have known what was been going on. But clearly, the computer repair guy tells us everything we needed to know over a year ago. He's watching the impeachment hearings. He has information that he's seen, not to mention all the potential illegal stuff that Hunter's doing with, minors and drug use and all this sort of stuff on these videos. I mean, forget all that. That's a whole separate thing. We're talking about the part of it that just deals with the corruption and the money laundering and all the other things going on. So the computer repair guy was smart enough to figure out from what was on that hard drive that there was big problems. And then the FBI gets this information, and we're being told now that they've had this investigation open since late 2019. That would be like December of 2019. And apparently they haven't been able to figure this out. That should have ended the impeachment hearings right there. Whoever knew about this or knew about this information at that time when the impeachment hearings were going on and knew about this information, they should already have been fired and then prosecuted for obstruction. But nothing is happening. I don't even hear anybody calling for that to happen. Then we're told, yes, there's been an investigation going on since 2019. Well, if there's been an investigation going on since 2019, that's almost a year. You're telling me that after almost a year, they haven't gotten a handle on what was going on there? I mean, we've already got a really good handle on it just from seeing a limited amount of information over just a period of weeks. At the very least, even though I think it's pretty clear that Joe Biden is incriminated in this information, but let's just say that they're going to give him the free pass. At the very least, Hunter Biden is absolutely 100% compromised. And in fact, as soon as Joe Biden announced that he was going to run for president, he should have gotten an immediate defensive briefing about his son's activities. If he claims he didn't know about them, which is what he claims, is he didn't know what Hunter's doing. Well, then he should have got a defensive briefing a long time ago about what his son is doing that could compromise him. Yet, as far as we know, that never happened, and I'm sure it didn't. And I can't believe how silent members of Congress are on this, and the Attorney General's office, and the FBI. Doesn't seem to be any problem. We're supposed to believe that this has been investigations been going on for a year and they haven't been able to put a couple of these things together. Why is it, if there was a legitimate investigation going on within a few weeks, no more than months, a couple months, they should have been interviewing everyone in that email chain who was associated with Hunter Biden associates in regards to all this. Which means Mr. Bobulinski would have been one of the top people on the list that they should have went and interviewed. He had to come forward on his own. They've been investigating for almost a year, and they never got around to interviewing Bobulinski? Never got around to interviewing the other three principals? They haven't been doing any investigation. Just like the Wiener laptop and everything else, they've been covering it up. That's why they wanted to get that laptop. To cover it up, to quiet it down, to hide it. Another thing. Whenever there's a high-profile investigation such as this, Congress is supposed to be briefed. They have oversight. Just like Comey didn't brief them for 9 months on the investigation into Trump. Here, there should have been a briefing. But it never happened. And I don't hear anybody complaining. If I was the head of one of those committees that has oversight over this, I would be jumping up and down. They should immediately demand, Ron Johnson, Grassley, whoever is the head of the committee that has oversight, should be immediately demanding a meeting with the FBI officials who are on this case, and they should tell them to bring with them their documents showing the investigation, where the investigation started, where it's been going, and the whole 9 yards. Because I bet you they show up with a blank folder. Because there hasn't been any investigation, nor will there be one, unless Trump's reelected. And maybe he can force someone. But he'll have to get rid of Wray. If he gets a real FBI director, they might actually do an investigation. But I guarantee you, if Grassley and Graham or Johnson or any of them subpoenaed the FBI and told them, we just learned that you have this investigation going on for almost a year. Good. We want to see where that investigation is going. We want to see what you've done. We want to see how many hours have been billed to this investigation, how many resources have been allocated to this investigation, and let's see what you've learned, where your investigation has taken you. Because we did our own investigation, and we put out our report, and it clearly shows a lot of problems. The idea was to bring it to your attention so you might look into it, but now we find out you have been looking into it, supposedly. So show us what you've done. Now, I imagine if Ron Johnson were to do that, the FBI would, of course, stonewall as much as they could. But if they were absolutely forced through subpoena to show what they've been doing since 2019, I bet you'd find they haven't been doing anything. Nothing. They haven't been investigating shit. We need to see the records of that investigation, or somebody does who has oversight. Because they're telling us that they have an investigation that's been ongoing since 2019. I don't believe them. I don't believe them. I think they're lying. Prove it. Because if they had a real investigation going on, Mr. Bobulinski and the other 3 principals would have already been interviewed a long time ago. Joe Biden would have gotten a defensive briefing about the possible issues he could be facing with his son, who could be easily compromised, at the very least. There'll be a lot of things going on. They've been covering up this entire thing. They covered it up. The very fact that they allowed the impeachment hearings to go through when they had this information, people should be locked up. Anyone who knew about this, had this information, and allowed that impeachment to continue and go forward, they should be locked up. That's obstruction. It's like I said a couple weeks ago. I have zero confidence that the FBI or the CIA or a lot of these other 3-letter agencies can ever be reformed. They need to be completely demolished, abolished and demolished. They need to level the building. They need to go to the Hoover Building right there in D.C. and level it to the ground, change the name of the organization, fire every damn body there, not allow any of them people to ever work for any government agency again, start from scratch. A new agency, new people with new guidelines and harsh penalties, criminal penalties, guaranteed 100% teed for those who engage in the type of crap that we've been seeing and that we're talking about right now. Level that building to the ground. I'm sure they can do it. We saw them do it before. We saw it on 9/11. Call the same guys that you used before to do Building 7, the nanothermite guys. Call them in, pack in the nanothermite, bring it down, bring down the building, haul the debris away, construct a new building, give it a new name, and maybe put an honest, reasonably intelligent person in charge of that organization that can actually do some good, that can maybe investigate. And what they should be primarily focused on is investigating crime within the government. They should be focused on enemies domestic. Foreign enemies are no problem. We have no problem with foreign enemies. They're too weak to really do much to us other than China. It's our domestic enemies that are going to kill us. So there's a lot of problems with this. A lot of problems. I don't believe the FBI has been doing any investigation. I believe they've been involved in what they've been involved in since day one, and that's a cover-up. This is how little these people actually care about national security, and this is why this is such an important issue. That we literally have the FBI, not only did they allow an impeachment to go forward against the President of the United States, which is a national security issue, knowing good and well they had information that would have exonerated him, but they're willing to allow a senile, old, corrupt politician to possibly be elected president, knowing good and well he will walk into office with not just himself, but his entire freaking family compromised by China, who's our real enemy, and could really do a great deal of harm to the United States. And they're willing to let that happen. The FBI is a threat to national security. They are a danger to national security. How can Barr not see this? How can members of Congress not see this? How can honest media organizations not see this? Our own FBI and intelligence services agencies are the biggest threat to America today. They're a bigger threat than our foreign adversaries. It's, again, we're living in a parallel reality, a world that you can imagine could possibly exist in the United States. Trump's got to be reelected, and he has got to put some people, I don't know who's been advising him on these appointments, but he needs to stop listening to these people. He needs to appoint some very serious, honest people who have big balls, who will go in there and turn these places upside down. I would eliminate. Another thing, Congress can cut off funding to the FBI. Why don't they do it? If I'm Ron Johnson, that's exactly what I say. I pick up the phone, I call Ray, I say, listen, you've been screwing with me now for 3.5 years, buddy. I'm sick of you. You know what? We're going to defund the FBI if you don't show up with all the following documents and the following people and answer some real questions. We're going to defund you. And then, if Ron Johnson can't get the votes, then he needs to come out publicly and have a press conference and give out each and every name of every person who's refusing to vote to defund the FBI. Give us their names. And let their constituents take care of the problem. It's time to put some people on the spot. It's time to man up. It's time for some patriots to step forward and make some sacrifices. The future of our republic is on the line, and we're a few patriots short. All the patriots live outside of Washington, D.C. They're the ones trying to save the country. People like me and you. While the people on the inside, who control the levers of power, who actually can do things that we can't do, they're subverting the process. They're actually working with the people trying to take down the country. The FBI is the enemy of the United States, as is the CIA and many of these other organizations, and most in the Democratic Party, many in the Republican Party, all the bureaucracies, the media, big tech. Man, oh man, we're in a world of hurt, folks. But the first thing we have to focus on is getting Trump reelected. That is number one, period. That has to happen first. Nothing else happens unless that happens. Once we elect Trump, then the day after, we can go back to work on draining the swamp and dealing with the deep state. And I know Trump gets it, but he's going to have to make some major changes in the way that he decides who he's going to appoint to these positions. And he needs to throw his weight around. And as far as Spygate's concerned, he needs to get involved. I think he needs to appoint a presidential commission. The day after the election, he should fire Ray, Haspel, Esper, and Barr, for starters. Now, as promised, I'm going to give my 2020 election predictions. These are not my 2020 dreams, not my 2020 hopes, not my 2020 aspirations. These are what I think is going to happen. I've been watching the electoral map for the past month and a half, 2 months, pretty closely. I've been watching as the race has been moving. I've been ignoring the polls for the most part because back in 2016, I pretty much ignored the polls, and I was correctly predicted Trump would win 3 weeks before the election, and I predicted he would get 304 electoral votes. I was off by 2. Or no, I said 302 and he ended up with 304, which later turned out to be 306. So I was pretty damn close. And it's because I was watching these rallies, and I was seeing all these people coming out and all this energy, and I was looking at the Rotten Reverend's policies and realizing that, man, a lot of these policies she's pushing are not going to play in the Midwest where I live, or the upper Midwest, where the steel industry is, where the automobile industry is, where the fracking industry is. A lot of these issues, the Second Amendment issue, the gun issue, the abortion issue, all these issues, I was looking at where Hillary stood, her foreign policy positions, and I'm thinking, these are not popular positions around here. They're not popular in the South. They're not particularly popular in the Southwest. They're only popular on the coasts. I don't think Hillary can win. Plus, nobody likes her. And look at the size of Trump's rallies. Something's not adding up. And that's why I decided that Trump's going to win this thing. And I was right. I believe the same to be true now. So I'm going to go ahead and make my prediction. I've been looking at the electoral map, and this is not my hope or dream or wish. And I'm being conservative here. There's a couple of states I'm not even giving Trump that I still think he has at least a 50-50 shot in. But I'm going to go with what I really think will happen. And what I think will happen is that Trump will win in a fairly healthy electoral college landslide, bigger than 2016. I have Trump on my electoral map at 322 electoral votes. 322 electoral votes. I'm predicting Trump will be reelected with 322 electoral votes. And I'm going to focus on some of the states that a lot of people are focusing on that they say pretty much will tell you how the election is going to go. And I agree. You can watch Florida, you can watch Ohio, and you can watch Pennsylvania right off the top. If Trump wins Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, it's pretty much over. Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, it's pretty much over. Along with the states that he's automatically going to win just because they always vote for the Republican. So if he wins the states, that the automatics, the ones he's automatically going to win, then he only needs to win Ohio, Michigan, and Florida. And I believe he will win all of them. I think Pennsylvania is going to be close. But I think he's going to pull it out. So I'm going to go through a few of these states real quick and tell you why my thoughts are such. Obviously, I live in Ohio. I can tell you that Trump's going to win Ohio. The enthusiasm gap around here of Trump versus Biden is just off the charts. Trump won here by 8.5 in 2016. I expect he'll win here by at least 8, maybe 10, somewhere between 8 and 10 points in Ohio. It's not going to be close. He'll win by 8 to 10 here in Ohio. And it's based on the enthusiasm, the energy industry, and a lot of hardcore Second Amendment people in the state of Ohio. And those are the main issues that will push Trump over the top. And keep in mind, Biden is actually not as good a candidate. I mean, there was a lot more support for Hillary around here than there is for Biden right now. And he beat Hillary pretty well. So put Ohio in the bank. That's a winner. Now let's look at Michigan. Michigan at this time is looks like it's, depending on which polls you're looking at, but you can pretty much call it a dead heat right now in Michigan. But I think Trump's going to win Michigan. And one of the main reasons I believe that that's going to happen is there's two real reasons. I'm looking at how well John James is doing. John James is to within a point, maybe even tied or maybe even a point ahead by now in the Senate race. And that tells you a lot about the direction people are thinking. But also, I think the thing that's going to put Trump over the top in Michigan is how unpopular the governor there, Gretchen Whitmer, is. You know, she has had probably, next to California, the most, probably the worst, I should say, COVID-19 lockdown policies going. She's tried to push some real hardcore tyranny on the folks up there in Michigan. And she recently lost in a major court decision. And I think that Whitmer is pretty much represents the views of the Democratic Party. I think a lot of people in Michigan think that if Biden is elected, it'll be almost like having Whitmer on a national scale. And when they see what Whitmer has done in Michigan, it probably puts the fear of God in them about thinking that Biden could be president. So I think Gretchen Whitmer will be the one to credit for Trump's victory in Michigan. We also know that they're a big Second Amendment state. They have a lot of energy things going on in Michigan. You, of course, have the auto workers, the steel workers. There's a lot of industries, a lot of blue-collar people who normally vote Democrat who are going to cross over and vote Republican, and, of course, just the general enthusiasm gap between Trump and Biden in the state of Michigan. And that's why I think Michigan will go for Trump. Of course, Wisconsin's another state. I think it'll be very close, but I think it will go to Trump. Of course, I think Trump's going to do very well there because he put down the riots there. And again, this is another state. They've benefited greatly from the trade deals, particularly the trade deal with Canada, dairy farmers there. And they realize that if Biden wins, he's going to roll back all of Trump's trade arrangements. And the dairy farmers, which Wisconsin is the dairy farm state, those dairy farmers in Wisconsin really benefited, and they have a pretty strong voice. Farmers and people like that really have benefited, and Trump, I think, is going to get a big push in the rural areas. And I think that, again, I think it's turnout and voter enthusiasm will carry the day. It will be close, but I think Trump will win Wisconsin. Very close race, but I think he'll win it. Pennsylvania is a state that I think Trump's going to win now, and I was thinking it was going to be really close before, and it probably still will be close, but not as close as, probably going to be a little bit bigger gap than I thought. I thought it may come down to less than 1%, but now it may be somewhere between 1 to 3%, because so many things in Pennsylvania, and you could probably include, as far as on the energy side, you also have states like Ohio, Texas, Oklahoma, South Dakota. These are all places that are doing a lot of energy exploration and things like that, fracking and things like that. You have a lot of steel industry there, a lot of blue-collar jobs, and a lot of Second Amendment issues, a lot of hunters, people like that. I mean, you get outside Philadelphia, you get into the more rural areas, or remember, Ohio borders Pennsylvania, and, you get into western Pennsylvania. Western Pennsylvania is, a lot like Ohio or Michigan or one of those places. So you have a lot of hunters, you have a lot of blue-collar steel workers, auto workers, a lot that type of thing. I think those people are going to, and the enthusiasm gap, again, I think is going to come to play. I think voter turnout is going to come into play, and I think that Pennsylvania, Donald Trump will carry Pennsylvania as well. Arizona, I believe, I don't think it was ever really that much in play, but of course I think the border issues, the fact that Trump has followed through on the border wall, immigration is a big issue in Arizona, as well as the gun issue. That obviously plays heavily in Trump's favor. I think Arizona stays with Trump. Nevada is another state. It's another state that's in play. I think Trump will carry Nevada because of primarily, again, the gun issue. You have a lot of libertarian-minded type people out in Nevada. Taxes will be an issue there as well. Taxes and guns, and with Nevada and Arizona, taxes, guns, and the immigration issue, and Trump's ability to control illegal immigration with his border wall and his other enforcement, I think will play big and will really help a lot and help him push those states over the top. Of course, Florida, I think Florida is going to go for Trump, and I think it's going to go slightly bigger than it did for Hillary. I think the reason is you're seeing already right now a lot of movement in the southern part, Dade County, Broward County. Now, Broward County is so left-wing, I can imagine Trump winning that, but he could drive down the percentage that Democrats normally win by in Broward County would certainly help a lot. But I think in Dade County, he's doing pretty well. I think that blacks, Hispanics, and you're talking about people from Cuba, Venezuela, you got people from Nicaragua, you got people from all over South America who fall in that category, and they are solidly behind Trump. So I think Trump's going to get a big push and a big turnout from blacks, particularly Hispanic, Latino voters in southern Florida. And I think in all these border states, Again, that comes into play in Arizona, Nevada, Texas. All these border states, I think you're going to see a big push, a big turnout from Latino, Hispanic community. And those people, many of them conservative, many of them religious, Catholics, have a lot of issues. And so I think that the black, Latino, Hispanic community is going to go much more for Trump in 2020 than they did for 2016, and that can certainly drive down both the turnout and the results, the amount of votes that the Democrats, particularly Biden, is looking for. I don't think they're going to be there, and I think that's why Trump wins, purely by attrition. Georgia, North Carolina. I never really thought that these states, every year we hear about Georgia, North Carolina could flip, but when you get down to like a week or two before the election, they tighten up, then Republicans go ahead. I think maybe in the future there's some concern there, but I think for 2020, I think we're pretty safe. We start to see Lindsey Graham is now pulling away a little bit in North Carolina, where he was in trouble. He was down. Tremendous amounts of money being poured into both the South and North Carolina races. Georgia, a lot of money being poured in. But I'm pretty confident Trump will win Georgia by at least 5. I think he'll win North Carolina by at least 3. So I don't think that those are troublesome at all. I think they put them in Trump's category, which I did. And overall, across the country, also I want to talk about New Hampshire. It's only 4 electoral votes, I believe, but it's kind of key. It's nice to pick off one of them states up in the Northeast. Keep in mind, Joe Biden came in 5th place in the New Hampshire primary. 5th place in the New Hampshire primary. And Republicans are never that far off from winning New Hampshire. I mean, it's kind of in play, but it usually edges out, goes Democrat. But I think Trump is going to pull out New Hampshire as well. He don't really need the 4 electoral votes, but I think he'll do it. And I think it has a lot to do with just pure voter enthusiasm turnout. Biden, again, finished 5th place in New Hampshire. Trump got more votes in the primary than all the Democrat candidates put together in New Hampshire, and he wasn't even being challenged. So I think look for New Hampshire to go for Trump. I think overall across the country in general, again, as I said, I think Trump is going to get pretty close to 20% of the black vote, somewhere between 15 and 20% of the black vote, better than double what he did in 2016. And I believe he'll get 40% or better from the Hispanic Latino community, and I think that puts him over the edge and allows him to get to the 322 electoral votes that I'm projecting he will get and win the election, the Electoral College, in a big way. Of course, we have the Senate, and I think at the end of the day, I think we will gain 1 seat in the Senate. I think it will be a +1 pickup. Of course, we have the race in Michigan, John James and Gary Peters. That race is deadlocked. I am hoping John James pulls it out. I think Alabama, we've got Tommy Tuberville will eventually win that seat. We'll hold on to that seat. Then, of course, you're going to have a battle between Loeffler and Doug Jones on the other side. I don't know who will win that seat. I hope it's Doug Jones, but either of those seats will be held by a Republican. Minnesota, you got a dead heat there with Jason Lewis and Tina Smith. It's a dead heat. Again, if it comes down to turnout, Trump carries Minnesota. I think he carries Jason Lewis with him. That's the +1 I'm looking at. Colorado, it looks like Hickenlooper is up, has a pretty comfortable lead over Cory Gardner. And unless something changes there, I think we're going to see Hickenlooper maintain that seat. I think McSally is going to pull it out in Arizona. Again, it will come down to turnout. North Carolina, Tillis Cunningham. I think Tillis is going to get that. Cunningham's got a lot of problems. South Carolina with Lindsey Graham, I think he'll pull it out. Maine, Susan Collins is trailing. If we lose 1 Senate in the entire country, if you lose a Senate seat, that's the one I wouldn't mind losing to get rid of Susan Collins. In Georgia, we have Perdue and Ossoff. I think Perdue will pull it out again on voter turnout, the top of the ticket. Joni Ernst is tied up in a race with this Teresa Greenfield. She destroyed her in a debate. I can't imagine Greenfield beating Ernst after that debate performance. And of course in Montana, that close race going on there between Steve Daines and Steve Bullock. I think Daines has a slight lead there. I think he'll pull it out. And as far as the Congress is concerned, we need to flip 20 seats. I hope we do it. I wish we do it. I pray we do it. But I wouldn't put money on it. I think we will gain somewhere around 8 to 12 seats. We need 20. I don't know if that's possible. And then, of course, we have that race out in California. Making a prediction, I believe Joe Collins will defeat Mad Maxine Waters. He's ran a hell of a campaign. See y'all.